today I present to you what if Jon Snow was badass king in the north. Please like and subscribe for more
Arya.
videos. Enjoy.
Serving the want to face the twins was another reminder that Arya Stark could never truly be no one. There was too much that had been done to her family for her to truly forget who she was. She was a northerner. And the North remembers. It wasn't the knowledge that House Frey's crimes against House Stark that had brought Arya back to Westeros. It wasn't the Lannisters or the Boltons. It wasn't the Mountain and all the others on her list. It was the nightmare of Jon that had killed any hope of Arya Stark becoming no one. Feeling the knives enter Jon's heart as his pale excuse for brothers killed him had brought a scream to her as she woke. Seeing those gray eyes turn lifeless was too much. The eyes we shared with father. It had awoken her. She was a Stark of the North. Arya didn't belong on the other side of the world, trying to forget herself. Jon needed her, whether it be for vengeance or to keep the daggers away from him. Jon had saved her more than she could believe, simply by giving her needle. For understanding me all those years. Arya wouldn't allow her brother to go unavenged. Arya wouldn't allow her brother to die alone in the cold, surrounded by traitors. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. That nightmare of Jon had carried her all the way to the docks to secure passage home. It had carried her through her fight with the waif, using Needle to send her to the many-faced god. Ending her with Needle felt like she had done it with Jon by her side. Arya had held it firmly when she made a pact in the House of Black and White. Arya Stark's freedom in exchange for an offering to the many-faced god. Her freedom demanded deaths. Arya knew who she would offer them. A family of freys that betrayed guest rights will be my price for freedom. An offering to the many-faced god and fulfillment of contracts that many would place if they could afford it. Arya promised that they would hear the tale from the merchants soon, as proof that she had completed her task. The kindly man believed her words and let her go free. She had asked why, having expected him to refuse. He had only smiled sincerely, as he always had. A girl does not understand what this house is truly for. It is to make people no one, whether in life or by death. What you offer is worth a girl becoming Arya Stark until death makes you no one. A man can wait until death takes you. But not today. Arya had replied simply as she began to leave the house. The kindly man continued to smile. Not today, no. Her freedom had allowed Arya to truly enjoy her dreams again. Arya had dreamed a lot as she sailed westward. She dreamt of the pack. She dreamt of her wolf, prowling the riverlands with her pack, calling to her. The night wolf called to her and they reunited in the woods as she walked northward. Arya had dreamed of Shaggy too. The youngest of the pack returned, heading homeward too. And it was Jon who she had dreamed of most once when she had reunited with Nymeria. Arya felt him with Ghost, marching southward, with an army at his back. She could feel him changed, more like a wolf. I've changed too. It didn't matter though. He was home. At Winterfell. That had been all she needed to know, that her Jon was not gone. It had made her smile. Some roads lead to the same castle, and I'll join you soon. Arya thought as she finished her preparations for the evening in the twins, looking at Walder Frey with a small smile. The North remembers Lord Frey. Great Jon Umber. The Freys only dared to go near the great Jon Umber's cell to bring food. Even then it was right next to the cell door. It had taken 8 men to put him in chains. One had been killed by that toothpick of a sword he thought would contain a Northman. 3 had been maimed with it and great Jon Umber's teeth as well. Another 2 had been killed when they thought it wise to attach chains to the stone floors. The great Jon had managed to get their throats with his teeth that time. Nobody came close after that, keeping close to the walls when they wanted to mock him and the few other hostages the Freys held. How glorious it was to see your son take a crossbow to the skull. You missed our parade for the king in the north. We attached his wolf's head to him, was such a frightening sight. The North belongs to Roose Bolton now, a loyal subject of the crown. About time the North was led by men and not wolves. I hear you have a second-born son. I hope he's as loyal as you, then I'll get to kill him like your eldest. Then your daughters will be mine to wed. Jon wasn't silent when they spoke. He wasn't wailing with grief when they threw his son's bones into the cell. Umber only gave them rage. The great Jon didn't give House Frey the satisfaction of breaking. A Frey couldn't break an Umber. Nobody breaks an Umber. He'd made them feel fear. He'd roared and he'd raged, pulling at his chains every time they came. He'd swore and he'd cursed. I'll gut you all with my bare hands and crush your skulls with my feet. I'll tear your bridge down and use it to bury their corpses under the river. He wouldn't stop raging until he knew he would have the chance to kill them. He ate everything that came his way to keep his strength to do. He would kill them all. Then he would head north and drag Bolton to the wall just so he could smash his skull off it. And the time had come. Rosalind Frey, now Tully, often came down to speak with her brother Oliver, a fellow prisoner, for trying to free what hostages the Freys had. A few nights ago, Lady Tully had come down with her newborn son, bringing news that Stark banners were flying over Moat Cailin once again, no longer Squid or Bolton ones. Frey troops had been ambushed when they were marching north, bringing more of their brood to get prospective brides. Few had survived it, and those that did had been poisoned, dying in the beds as they shit their guts out. That meant only one thing to the great Jon. The will had made it to the wall, and a Stark was retaking the north. He'd chanted every time the Freys entered the dungeon, alongside his fellow prisoners, Oliver Frey, Mark Piper, and Harrion Karstark, who had been brought to the twins as a punishment for his family offering support to Stannis. The hostages chanted the same words every time. The North remembers. The King in the North. The North remembers. The King in the North. The North remembers. The King in the North. Then the Freys came to the dungeons, a group of 10, all looking nervous and drunk. They were coming for his cell. The great Jon roared. One tried to be brave and answer his roar. You won't be snarling like an animal soon. We've been sent a letter from Winterfell covered in blood. Our family and the Boltons have been killed by a Stark bastard. I imagine your brood of savage giants were helping him. You and Karstark pay the price for the North misbehaving. Great Jon laughed, echoing the cells as they walked apprehensively. They all looked nervous, unsure how to proceed and give the killing blow to him. Umber wouldn't give them the chance. My family doesn't have house words. A picture paints 1,000 words and we are giants breaking from chains. He gave a blood-curdling roar as he pulled at the chains, snapping the iron rings from the stone floor. He didn't give them the time to charge or move back as he whipped one of them in the face with the iron, then running at him and punching him in the jaw and sending him to the stone floor. He heard the man's skull crack against the stone. The great Jon roared at the Freys, so clearly afraid as he snapped the nearest one's neck. Umber. He roared his house name as he battered them, swatting their toothpick swords away with his irons, then disemboweling them with their own weapons and smashing their skulls against the iron cell doors. Umber. One dared to get close to him. The great Jon strangled him with his irons. He did the same with them all, using his hands, teeth, and shit excuse for a sword to tear them apart. He made quick work of the guards, only 2 left alive, one breathing heavily on the floor, trying to crawl away. Umber placed his foot on the Frey's skull and crushed it, hearing the pathetic excuse of a man scream as he died. He didn't let the last Frey leave, grabbing him by his neck and raising him to his level. The great Jon snarled at the screaming Frey. He clenched his right hand, missing 2 fingers, and punched the Frey repeatedly into the gut. He did it until he punched a cut in the skin. Then he tore at the cut, ripping flesh from his stomach. The great Jon dropped the Frey and slammed his foot into his throat. The great Jon grabbed the keys to the cells, then turned to his fellow hostages and gave them a grin as he released them. He was covered in blood. Piper gave him a face mixed with relief and horror. The others had given similar looks. The great Jon only grinned more. Your banners speak the truth then? You are descended from giants? The great Jon laughed at the rivermen as he reveled in fry blood. What's our plan then here, Umber? Harrion asked as he went to grab the dead freys swords from the blood-drenched cell, handing them to the others. We kill every fry in our path and head north to fight with our king. Then we come back with an army and slaughter the rest. What of my sister? Oliver asked nervously. We go get her and your nephew lad and take her north too, lad. Don't worry, we won't make you kill any of your kin. I'll be killing every fry I see. Oliver looked uncomfortable but nodded at him. It had become apparent as the group made their way. He could see all the fry men being torn apart by wolves. A massive pack of them mauling the freys at their tables. He could see some try to run, only to be jumped upon by more. It was a glorious sight. The North remembers. And at the head table, he could see a dire wolf, almost as large as a horse, snarling at Walder Frey as he was being held by a girl with dark hair, holding a small sword. The great Jon watched her whisper something into the old cunt's ear, then slit his throat, dropping the old lord into the table. The sight was a brutal one, but it was just. The freys had deserved every piece of it for breaking guest rights. The dire wolf turned its head to them, and all the wolves turned with it. They were staring at them. The young woman looked towards them, then walked in front of the massive pack, speaking calmly. Lord Umber, I haven't seen you since the last feast of the Bannermen at Winterfell. It is good to see you. She was short, with long brown hair done in the northern style and dressed in breeches. Her accent had a light northern accent with some things slightly different. She looked familiar, almost like Lyanna Stark. As she got closer, he saw the eyes, stark gray. Great Jon kneeled before her, the rest of the group followed suit. The great Jon gave a joyous bellow into the hall, despite the horror of it. Princess Arya Stark. House Umber is yours. Arya smiled at him with an exasperated sigh. Her wolves prowling around her. Winter had come for House Frey. Notes.